Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
And I almost forgot how to count to three. Like, seriously. I hit record and it's like, what do I do now?
I don't know. Hang on. I'm one. Fuck.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
What do I do? I feel that way. I feel that dread every time we say, all right, hit and record. And like, oh, shit.
See, it's not even so much dread for me. It's just I'm an idiot and like my mind goes blank. And it's like, wait, where am I and what am I doing?
Well, for me, it's like, I'm not ready. I always say I'm ready to record, but I'm not ready to do this. I'm really not ready today. I'm fucking tired. And like, I got to talk about like what has probably turned out to be the most difficult like prep I've had to do for the show. We're on episode 40. I saw that 40.
Like tease that you tweeted the other day, and it's like, huh?
Yeah,
that sounds interesting.
And it's happened before, where it's like we take topics that are, there might be some controversy, there might be some fact and fiction that's hard for writers to separate, and that really hit here today. So yeah,
but sometimes those are the best stories where it's like, fuck it, we'll just let like this merge, like
right.
It's at least based on truth, but it's probably merged with legend. But here it is. Here's the story.
Right, and that's basically what happened. Like, because I've had it happen before where I've been like, well, fuck this. If I can't figure out what actually happened here, I don't want to deal with this shit. But this was one that was worth kind of sticking with, and yeah, like even if like 90% of the info is wrong, which is that's par for the course for this show. Like it's still interesting. So yeah, just a little preface we always do. If you haven't heard the Non-Essential Podcast before, what we do every week, me and Steve get together and tell each other stories, whether they're fact or fiction or like there's no real rule or topic. We just sort of do whatever interested us that week. And what interested me this week was a Russian assassin.
Well, that's like every week, but
I'm always interested in Russian assassins. Send me emails if you're Russian assassins. I'd love to talk to you. So Alexander Solonik was born in the city of Kurgan, Russia in 1960. A lot of his early years are left as something of a mystery, but it is said that as he kind of grew into his teenage years, he was very athletic and an exceptional sports shooter. But like I mentioned, a big problem with this story, this guy's life, is that like just about literally everything you read about him will get contradicted in the next article. So
it's a great story to write about if you're a kid in school that needs like an essay, because whatever you make up, it's true in one way or the other.
Yeah, somebody probably confirmed it and then somebody else denied it. It's a really interesting story, but it's just like there's a million versions of it based off of whoever's writing it. So it's like he may have joined the Soviet military around his early adult years. And they say if he did, he was in a special unit of the Central Intelligence Department, which was attached to a group of troops in East Germany. This squad was known as Little Red Devils by Western forces for how effective they were. And the rumor is that Solonik himself was tasked with the assassination of senior NATO officials. Others say he just served in a tank division.
I like how many of these stories, it's like, oh, these units had a nickname, Little Red Devils. And it's like, is that supposed to... Like, I feel like ridiculous saying that. You'd be like, oh, the Soviet, intelligence spy. And they're like, Steve, call them by their name. You're like, fuck. The Little Red Devils.
Yeah. A Little Red Devil sounds like a performing, like, circus troupe or something. But yeah, others say that he didn't do any of that. He just served in a tank division. Others say he was never in the military and just worked at a sports company, well, whatever that is, and was actually...
Would you like some sports? We sell sports.
Right. And he was actually a pretty rubbish shot with a gun, according to those people. So it's like he's either a super assassin or he couldn't hit fucking anything. Anytime you have those three origin stories to work with, it's like, what the fuck is this guy?
Like I said, all bases are covered.
So his lawyer actually says Solonik wasn't with the Central Intelligence Department, but he was with the military in a territory in Germany near where those officers would train. And Solonik liked to watch what they were doing and really wanted to become something of a super soldier himself. So really, he was just like a soldier who was a really big fan.
But that seems weird to me, because if you're training top secret super assassin spies, like, you tend to not do it where other people can watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's, they're technically military and he's technically military. So like you watch, I have to imagine it was just like you could see him running laps and stuff and like
eating together in the cafeteria. He's like, oh,
basic like fitness stuff. Like he wasn't seeing them like do like the actual cool shit, or maybe he was, because a lot of cool shit ended up happening with Alexander Solonik. But like it's hard to tell with his background. Like, was he trained for this, or did he just was he naturally athletic enough and crazy enough to like figure out some of this shit on his own? After leaving the military, he would enroll in police school, but that would only last 6 months, or not at all, depending on who was writing the story.
Which is funny, because over here, police school is only 6 months. So, like,
yeah,
at least here in Ohio.
Yeah. There, it was a little bit different. Some say he just dropped out, but most seem to believe he committed some sort of criminal act that authorities wanted to keep from becoming like a big public, like, look at this cop in training fucking up.
He pulled over a minority and he didn't beat him up. They're like, oh, fuck, you're out, go.
So they just dismissed him before it could turn into anything legal. As a regular civilian again, Solonik became a gravedigger, but would be arrested in the fall of 1987 for rape. He wasn't proven guilty, or he was, again, depending on who writes it. You would feel like there would be some sort of concrete fucking evidence of...
Yeah.
Because this is the goddamn justice system. And
it sounds relatively modern, like...
Right, yeah. Like, the bulk of his kind of... The core details of his life kind of start around the 90s. So anyway, he was... They say he wasn't proven guilty, or he might have been proven guilty, or he was charged with actually 3 rapes, but they only could prove 1. I don't fucking know. Because even the article that says he wasn't guilty still says he was sentenced to a correctional colony for 8 months, which seems pretty strict if a court said he didn't do it.
Given the things that I've heard, law enforcement over here and military have somewhat of a reputation. Over there, it's even worse. So maybe that was the problem. Again, it was like the police thing where they're like, you didn't rape these women? Oh, fuck. What are you even thinking? You go to jail.
What do you mean you only raped 1 woman?
You're a failure. That is a disgrace to Mother Russia.
Yeah, again, and I just wrote down here, like, this guy is easily the most frustrating topic I've ever tried to bring to the show. But I do I do find some commonality from there, and there's less contradiction. So anyway, the one thing we do know is that he didn't want to be a prisoner. So kind of during his trial, or maybe it was around the sentencing point, he was visiting with his wife, who was his second wife at this point, in a court meeting room. Suddenly, he jumped out the second-story window of the building and disappeared. He ended up going to Tiumen, Siberia, for several months.
I think jail would probably be better.
Well, he liked Siberia, apparently. He flipped a coin. So Solonik then, after a few months on the run, tried to get rid of a few distinct features he would want removed to blend in better. So he had like a noticeable mole on his face, I guess, and a crown tattoo on his hand. But when he entered a cosmetic saloon to get those removed, he was arrested pretty much immediately. Normally, somebody with a police background would be sent to like a special colony away from prisoners who want to fuck up a former cop. But Alexander went to a normal prison where the prisoners immediately wanted to brawl with him, just test his strength, I guess.
But that's not fair because he never became a cop. Like
a cop in training. In their mind, it's like, you're a fucking cop. So it was a very long, brutal fight. And Alexander supposedly held his own against a dozen prisoners. Even though that, you don't, I don't think anyone wins a 1-on-12 fight. Even if you win, like, you're still beat to shit.
Right.
But he held his own, and while they didn't like him, because like he was, a cop in training, and he didn't really do anything with them. Like, he didn't interact with other prisoners. Like, he just sort of stuck to his own and just worked out, basically, for a few months. But the prisoners left him alone, and he did likewise. So, keeping to himself and not really starting trouble for about 2 years, he was sent to the industrial area of the prison, and this area wasn't particularly well guarded compared to the rest of the joint. So
you'd think it'd be like more well guarded if it's called the industrial area. Like,
well, it's where they would send prisoners to work and stuff if they were, kind of on good behavior and stuff. So I don't know what actually it entails. I do know that
industry.
I do know that Solonik saw this as the key opportunity, and because he was actually a pretty small dude, even though he was in good shape, he was 5'5". He escaped through the jail's ventilation system in 1990. An escaped fugitive stuck in Siberia and in need of a lot of money to stay ahead of authorities, Solonik finally embraced his true calling, hitman.
Yeah. Maybe what else can you do?
Yeah, I mean, so he joined the Kurgan crime syndicate back in his hometown. And
I'm curious, like, how did they have an ad in the paper or something? Like, if I wanted to go join a crime syndicate, I'd have no idea how to even begin to do that.
Well, I mean, it's kind of left up into mystery, but Solonik claimed that, like, it's like you work your way up an organization. If you ever watched Gangland,
but I mean, like, how do you even find it? Like, do they have a building with a sign out front? I mean, entry level position.
I mean, if you've been to prison and shit, I have to imagine you know people who know people.
Contacts, right.
And he says, kind of quickly he worked his way up into the role of assassinations. So godfathers of that organization ordered the hit of a leader of another criminal organization in the area, and he supposedly carried that out just a month and a half after his escape. So, like, he probably talked a pretty big game of, like, yeah, I'll fucking kill anyone. Because it seems like he didn't spend a lot of time with, like, the more petty aspects of that world. And for his work, like, he did a few assassinations for them, and he was given a considerable reputation in Moscow's underworld. Even given the nickname Alexander the Great, specifically because people were in awe of his ability to shoot 2 guns at once. Which you just have to...
So he was a great shot or a terrible shot, but he could shoot either great or bad. Maybe that's the problem. One hand was really bad and the other was good, but he could just do it at the same time.
Apparently that was, like, his, like, big thing. Like, he got the nickname Super Killer and Alexander the Great. Because people are like, holy shit, you can shoot 2 guns? Can you do it in the air?
I'm just imagining, like, one hand dead on without even sighting down, and then the other just waving around. Like,
yeah, totally. So this rep got him a lot of work, and some of it was very high profile. Like, police were shocked to see the assassination of a Viktor Nikiforov, aka Kalina, in the winter of 92. And then just 6 months later, a Valery... You can't put a D and an L next to each other. This isn't fair. Dlugok, aka Globus, was also killed. His team of bodyguards nor an armored car saved him from the sniper shot that killed him. Then in 94, Vladislav Wiener, aka Boban, was also murdered. So, like, for us in America, these names probably don't mean that much unless you're, really something of an authority on Russian crime history. But these were, like, some of the biggest crime bosses in Russia. Like, it would be comparable to like, one guy taking out, like, a Luciano Capone and like, Bugsy Siegel level crime boss in terms of just, like, their profile and stature. Like, and to do it in such quick succession.
Right. And you imagine with each one, like, they would start to notice, like, oh, shit, we're not above, like, being target. Because a lot of those people, I think, kind of act like, or they know that, like, oh, there's not too many people out there that would actually have the audacity to come after us. And it's like, oh, shit, he's dropping us one by one.
Right. And you're doing it effectively. And, like, you're doing it despite, like, their, like, what would be seen as, like, normal precautions and stuff. So in 1994, Solonik returned to Siberia to talk to a man named Andrei Rura, with the nickname Mammoth, and he was the top crime boss in Tiumen. Mammoth apparently owed Solonik like $1 million for some work Solonik had done, and after a long discussion and refusal by Mammoth, Solonik would be on his way back to Moscow just when police were finding Mammoth's body. So, like, this guy's just, like, and he doesn't give a shit. Like,
yeah, I mean, I watched the first John Wick, and I haven't seen the others yet, but, well, I guess 3's not out yet, but,
yeah.
But I know you don't hire a super killer and then fuck him over. That's, like, a bad idea.
Yeah, and that seemed to be what was happening, and it's really interesting that, like, at this point, he'll do jobs for people, but he's not like one organization's hitman, really. Like, if you fucked him over, like, he had no problem taking you out too. And again, like, and supposedly this guy was a fucking terrible shot to some people, and it's just like, I have no idea what his actual history is.
Maybe he was like, he could have been played by Leslie Nielsen. Like, he was a bad shot, but they would always, like, just happen to ricochet the right way that would like scare a cat, that would make a car swerve off the road and, like, hit a tree, and the tree would fall on the target. And he's like, yep.
Yeah. So later that year, Solonik and a companion were stopped by officers in the Prodrovsky marketplace for an ID check. Taken to a police room, nobody checked to see if the men were armed, which is funny because they handcuffed them, but they didn't pat him down. Sure as shit, Solonik had a gun hidden under a raincoat he was carrying. He pulled it out, he killed 4 police officers in the room, and then ran back out into the market and killed 2 more security guards and another cop. Him and his accomplice tried to climb a fence to get away when Solonik was shot directly in his kidney. He kept running, but the wound would slow him down, and he would eventually be apprehended as his friend got away. It's said that an officer pursuing Solonik hid behind a cement pole as Solonik fired 3 shots at him that hit the exact same spot on the pole, which is some crazy dead aim, even though it's not really what you want to be aiming at if you're trying to kill someone. You probably shouldn't be trying to shoot a concrete pole.
Yeah.
But it's still really impressive.
Solonik's using some kind of, like, cheat.
Yeah, he's probably aimbotted. So at this point, they didn't fuck around with Solonik. They knew who he was. And they put him in the Matroskaya Tishina, aka Sailor's Rest. And it's one of the toughest prisons in the entire world. There's actually a good chunk of documentaries about this place and just how fucking hard it is for people to try to escape. And he recovered from his kidney wound and just sort of kept working out. He studied foreign languages and literature while he was inside. And if anybody was paying attention to what he was doing, they probably would have said, seems like he's about to try to escape.
I was going to say, like, I'm all for, like, prisoner reform and stuff, but giving a super killer assassin access to, like, foreign language lessons and stuff like that seems like a bad idea.
Like, he's not trying to outreach to the prison population. You know, like,
give him some Curious George books or Where's Waldo. And
like, he's up to shit. And sure as hell, he was up to shit. So he orchestrated an insane job through some organized crime connections where a guard connected to this criminal group smuggled Solonik a rope, hooks, and a gun. And at night, when the guards would think he was asleep, this guard in particular would take him to the roof where they would climb down to the grounds and get to a BMW waiting for them. It went off without a hitch, except some people say that this corrupt guard's body was found a short time after in the Yauza River. And then those same people say, no, it wasn't immediately after saying that. So who the fuck knows? Maybe the guard is dead. Maybe he's not. But Super Killer, Solonik did get out. But at this point, he had 43 hits in his assassin career. He was infamous, and he was pretty burnt out, and said he was just done with mafia work, and fled to Greece in the early 97. He left behind a reputation for his effective ruthlessness and ability to just disappear and reappear in the criminal world. Because like any assassin, you can't just constantly be mowing people down, but he would just sort of show up and suddenly everybody would be like, fuck, he's back. But quitting the mafia is never so simple. And especially for the world of Hitman, kind of like what you were talking about, where it was like these high bosses were like, what the fuck? This guy's capable of that, and we're going to just let him.
Yeah, we're not safe while he's out. Plus, he knows our secrets, because even if he's not after you, he knows you hired him to kill somebody, and that's dirt that he has on you. Right.
And as good of a killer as Solonik is, in the world of Hitman, there's always somebody who's going to be looking to prove themselves at your expense. So this is one version of events. But it's kind of worth noting that everything else about Solonik, there's no firm consensus, because there's like the Elvis thing. People say he's fucking alive right now. Because even fingerprint records are not conclusive about this dude. But for the most part, this seems like the most likely outcome for him. So the Mafia, who were bitter over Solonik and probably afraid of what he knew and what he could do, hired his old buddy Sasha Soldat, who was another notorious assassin in his own right, to track Solonik down. Even though he fled to Greece, Solonik wasn't exactly living under the radar. He was living in a $90,000 a year rented villa near Athens. He had a basketball court, a personal golf course, and a sculpture-filled garden. And he was living a charmed life with his girlfriend, who was a former Miss Russia winner named Svetlana Kotova. On January 30th, 1997, happy to see his old friend, Solonik and Soldat hugged and began to talk and catch up. But the moment Solonik turned his back, Soldat wrapped a cord around his neck and strangled Super Killer to death. Soldat and his men also killed his girlfriend. It would take 2 months for police to find his body, which only came about when they received an anonymous phone call to tell them to grab a parcel waiting for them at a gas station. The package contained a map of where Solonik's body was, with the note reading, "You wanted Solonik? Get him." An officer on the scene who had met Solonik before confirmed the body's identity, which means nothing because the guard probably changed his mind 1 hour later.
Well, here's the thing. You said 2 months later?
Yeah.
See, a body's going to be so decomposed by then anyway.
Right.
It's not, yeah.
Well, depending where they found it. But that's also
true.
That's also up in the air. But yeah, it is a frustrating but very interesting assassin story.
But see, that seems like a great way, if you're hired to kill your friend, but you were friends, that seems a great way to, for everybody to solve problems. Be like, look, we'll kill some random person and say it's you. You can disappear off the radar and live happily ever after. I'll collect this paycheck for killing you.
Yeah.
Ta-da.
Yeah, and there are people who say that's what happened. And Solonik did have a history of, and I think any assassin probably did, excuse me, of, plastic surgery and stuff to kind of hide key features and keep yourself updated. So there are a lot of people who say, the fucking dude wouldn't look how this guy would remember him anyway.
True. Well, like I said, especially after even if they were in a freezer or something, it's it's gross if you haven't like been acquainted with this stuff, but your body's change. They're going to bloat or shrink or decompose depending on what conditions that they're in. Yeah. So it'd be very easy to misidentify a body that's been dead for 2 months.
Yeah, and like I said, everything I've just said is probably wrong because there's no way to find out what's true about him.
You say, well, why send the police a note? Then I say, well, you have to have proof to like get your paycheck, right? Like, but interesting. I'd like to think that he's still alive and he's coming after us as we speak.
I probably ought to
like these fuckers, this podcast that 3 people listen to are going to blow my cover. I'm going to get them.
Hell yeah, I am. I'm done. I'm leaving.
Solonik. I'm a little disappointed that was a story about a Soviet assassin and there was only a handful of names that were actually like hard to say.
Yeah. What can I say? I'm damn good.
You're getting better at that. Yeah.
No, those fucking like Russian mobsters he killed were. I'm not joking. Like, you can't put a D and an L and a U next to each other and expect my mouth to know what to do. It's not fair.
That's why every night when I watch, or I guess I don't play every night, but every time I watch the Blue Jackets play hockey, I feel so bad for those announcers because it's such a fast sport and so many of the names are these like.
Oh, and he
Eastern
passes
European...
the puck to Krovsky. And it's like, right. What the fuck was that? And every like hockey last name is the perfect hockey last name.
That's why my wife can't get over. Columbus just picked up a player named Dzingel, and she's like, "What was that?" I'm like, Dzingel. and I think it's like DZ, like what you're talking about. But I don't know. I don't follow.
Hockey is the one fucking sport that could make like just a normal last name like Smith somehow have a K in it or something.
Yeah, so I'm not looking to get a hockey announcer job anytime soon.
Oh man, but some of them are so good.
Anyway, my story actually is going to have some parallels to yours, but not.
Oh, you're talking
like
about
super obvious ones.
Awesome.
Michael Malloy was born sometime in the 1870s, probably. At some point in his life, not even he seems to know when, he immigrated to the United States from Ireland. And that's about as much as anybody knew about Michael Malloy's life prior to about 1932. The owners and patrons of Marino's Speakeasy in New York, Michael was simply an elderly, homeless alcoholic who showed up daily and sometimes, but rarely, would pay off his bar tab with a little bit of money that he'd earned doing like odds and ends, sweeping alleys and that kind of stuff. Nobody knew where Michael Malloy stayed when he wasn't at the bar, but every morning he'd show up and ask for another mornin's mornin', which apparently meant whiskey. He'd drink for a few hours before passing out on the floor. It was on one such day when, after Michael had passed out, fellow patrons Daniel Kreisberg and Francis Pasqua, along with the bar owner Tony Marino, had come up with an idea. The poor slob passed out on the floor was clearly drinking himself to death anyway. Why not take out a life insurance policy on him and then help him along his way?
Are you really sure you haven't done this one before? Because this is the exact setup for another one you've done before.
Yep. Nope. How hard could it be to encourage an alcoholic to drink himself to death when he's clearly doing that already anyway? It wasn't like the most original idea in that Tony Marino, the bar owner, had pulled off a similar fraud a year or so ago. He had befriended a Mabel Carson, a local homeless woman, and convinced her to take out a $2,000 life insurance policy, naming him the beneficiary. Then one night, he kept her drinking until she blacked out and then removed her clothes, soaked the mattress and sheets with ice water, and pushed the bed under an open window. On the coroner's report, the cause of death was listed as bronchial pneumonia, and Marino was able to collect the life insurance payment without suspicion. So the three agreed that Michael Malloy would make a great victim for this, and so they they sealed their pack with a drink and set their plan in motion. Pasqua was an undertaker by trade, and he would take on the job of securing the life insurance policy. Or in this case, policies, because why just take out one?
Yeah.
He recruited a friend to accompany him to meetings with insurance agents, posing as one Nicholas Malloy.
Why be rich when you can be double rich?
Right. In this case, triple rich. So he got a friend to call himself Nicholas Malloy and say he was the cousin of this Michael Malloy. Nicholas was supposedly a florist that Pasquale knew through his work as an undertaker. A fact that one of his co-workers was willing to cooperate, so that's one more person that they brought in. For those keeping score, that's now 5 people in on this plot. Then they brought in Joseph Murphy, so the 6th person.
Oh man, I think I know this story, and I think I almost used it a couple weeks ago.
It's a very good one. That's probably why it was familiar to you, because I know I've done life insurance assassination stories before, but not this one. So anyway, so they also brought in this Joseph Murphy. He was the bartender at this bar, and he was to identify the body once Malloy had been pickled to death. It took all of 5 months, and they had to find the right crooked insurance agent, but Pasquale was able to secure 3 separate insurance policies. On top of that, all of them contained a double indemnity clause, which basically just means that if the person dies as a result of an accident, the payout is more. It's usually double, hence the name. Which just seems like a weird concept to me, because it turns it into like a lottery. It's
that's just sports betting.
Right.
Because like the over and under of just how many buses will hit him.
The whole point of life insurance is like, oh, if you die, like in my case, if something were to happen to me, my life insurance policy should help, like,
it goes to
Tara,
me. It should go to me so I can keep the show going.
Exactly. But it's to like help like cover whoever's left behind with expenses. And like, it's like saying, well, if they die naturally, you'll have expenses. But if they die in a weird way, jackpot. Double bonus.
It's like really just like, hey, but if you let it ride, if you put it all on black, it's like, if you think you can get away with murder, then we'll pay you out. But if you don't, we don't pay anybody anything
at all. Right. I think the concept is like, if I get, say, cancer and I die over a 2-year period, then, whoever's left behind has time to like prepare. But if I get hit by a car, then that's just like a sudden thing. So maybe they need, I don't know.
And the only thing that can heal my aching heart is thousands upon thousands of dollars.
So you might think that this plan, as simple as it was, wouldn't need to involve 6 people. And you're right. It needed to involve 10, apparently, because at some point, 4 more regulars got in on the act. There were minor criminals John McNally and Edward Tin-Ear Smith, who did have a false ear, but like weirdly, it was made out of wax. So
he even fucked his nickname up.
Right. And
just the idea should have been Waxy.
He got tired of being called Edward Earwax, so it's like, it's tin, guys. It's tin, I swear. I don't know what that accent was.
Please believe me, sir.
There was also Tough Tony Bastone, which is like, right. And his partner in crime, Joseph Meglione, sorry. Even more mobsterish.
I like anybody who just like has to call themselves tough.
Tony.
It was even funny back then. Cause like,
hey, Anthony. Hey, it's Tough Tony. Thank you very much. Don't make me come to fisticuffs over this.
Yeah,
I don't know. I can't.
The only thing that would have made Anthony Soprano a more memorable character is if they consistently called him Tough Tony.
Tough Tony Soprano, yeah. So basically, this had become just like a giant murder party, and Michael Malloy was the unwitting guest of honor.
Hell yeah.
So one morning, as Malloy sauntered into Marino's bar, he was greeted with some wonderful news from the owner. Thanks to the tough competition with other local bars, Marino had no choice but to relax his rules and grant Michael an open-ended pay-when-you-want tab. So basically, and I love that this guy bought that, because that makes no fucking sense. It's like, look, man, business is tough because these other bars, so new rule, you can drink as much as you want and pay for it if you feel like it. That'll save this bar.
It's a new free-to-drink system we're bringing.
Just to keep us afloat, you see.
And
it's tough out there.
And you can, and if you want, you can buy an assortment of these mystery boxes that will have little umbrellas of various designs you can put on your drink.
It didn't have to make much sense because Malloy was an alcoholic and he was really fucking excited when they told him you could just drink as much as you want.
Hell yeah. Turpentine, whatever.
Of course, he ordered a whiskey, and the second he'd finish his whiskey, Marino would be there to refill the glass. And so Malloy drank, and then drank some more. Right about now, I'm imagining like a whole room full of these like 10 conspirators, just like Malloy's so drunk and happy that he doesn't notice nobody else is fucking drinking. They're all just like watching him.
Yeah.
And they're not even like trying to be like inconspicuous about it. They're just like staring, waiting for him to die.
That's where he fucked up. You need to get that like alcoholic social paranoia that I have, where it's like, wait a minute, I'm being judged here. Get away from me.
But that's what, like, it automatically sets this guy up. You feel bad for him because he's just this homeless, elderly alcoholic, and he's just so damn excited. This is like his Christmas, and he thinks everybody around him is like his friend at this point. And he's like, "This is great. We're all drinking and having fun." And they're all just like, "Die, you motherfucker!" But he didn't die. He kept drinking until he was done. Then he stood up, said he'd be back soon, and stumbled out the door. So the next day he came back and he drank and drank and drank some more, and then left. This continued for 3 days. He just would drink as much as he could possibly drink, and showed no signs of like slowing down, let alone any hints that he was dying. Each night they kind of hoped that he'd stumble out and he'd like choke on his vomit in his sleep or fall and hit his head, like drunks can have a tendency to do. But each morning he'd show right back up.
It sounds like a pro.
Well, he's an Irishman. I mean, that was our first mistake. But, and then literally that was like the only thing they knew about this guy. They're like, he's old and he's Irish. Give him some whiskey. So there's a reason it turns out that Bastogne was called Tough Tony and not Patient Anthony. By the fourth day, he'd had enough, and he said, why not just shoot this guy in the head?
Oh no, an accident. Bang.
Bang. But the others weren't like ready to resort to flat out murder just yet, because I imagine most of them had convinced themselves that they weren't doing anything wrong. After all, they weren't killing Malloy. He was killing himself. He's an alcoholic and it was his fault for drinking so much. So they were just like facilitating it. I imagine that's how they'd like justified it.
When we told him we told an alcoholic he can have all the poison he wants.
Hey, Judge, that's not our fault. He could have stopped at any time.
That will hold up.
There's a line here. Making a person drink themselves to death, that's cool. Shooting him in the face, that's too far. Instead, they came up with a new strategy. They were going to replace Malloy's whiskey and gin with wood alcohol. If you're not familiar with wood alcohol, I was not.
I'm very familiar. No.
It's exactly what it sounds like. It's alcohol that's been extracted from wood. Which, basically, it's the kind of product that's suited more for industrial use and less for drinking.
From nature, and through this, we return to nature.
That's what it gets me when everybody's like, it's organic. It's like, there's a lot of organic shit that'll kill you. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. But anyway, basically drinks that contained just even like 4% wood alcohol could lead to blindness. And this was in the early 30s, but like the statistics were by the end of the 20s, more than 50,000 people in the U.S. had died from ingesting drinks that were tainted with wood alcohol. I think it was like a common thing. You'd get like moonshine, especially once bootlegging kicked in with Prohibition, and people would like cut stuff with wood alcohol, and it wasn't a great idea. But presumably because they were so pissed that Malloy had drank so much free booze over the last few days, they didn't just taint his drinks with wood alcohol. They fed it to him straight. Joseph Murphy, the bartender, purchased 2 tins of wood alcohol from the hardware store. And once Malloy had consumed a number of whiskey drinks, they switched out the real liquor for the fatal stuff. And so Malloy took a shot, and then another shot, and then another shot. He didn't notice that it wasn't his favorite alcohol, and that instead he was drinking straight murder hall. And he kept asking for more. And then he got up and left.
All alcohol is murder, Hall. It's just...
That's true.
This is how you want to go.
Yeah. So they tried again the next night, and then the night after that, and so on. Then one night, Malloy finished his drink and suddenly crumpled to the floor. For a moment, everybody just watched as his body lay motionless. Someone checked his pulse, and his heart rate had slowed considerably. His breaths were shallow and barely noticeable, so they waited some more. Then finally, his chest rose as he drew one long, ragged breath and began to snore. A few hours later, he woke up, sat back down at the bar, and said, "Give me some of the old regular, me lad."
Give me some of that wood poison you got there.
Yeah, that's the thing, is they probably thought they were being sneaky. He's like, this stuff's fucking good. Give it to me straight.
Man, I have one glass of this, I feel things again.
So Tough Tony once again recommended a more direct and violent resolution, but the group declined. Instead, Pasqua hatched a new plan, and it was perhaps the most brilliant one yet. They would soak some oysters in denatured alcohol, which is ethanol basically, for a few days, and then while he was drinking, they'd feed him the tainted seafood. Again, Pasqua was an undertaker, and he assured the group that oysters taken with alcohol would cause an acute case of indigestion, since the alcohol basically preserves the oysters and keeps them from being digested, which sounds very sciencey.
Yeah.
And so they tried that. And Malloy loved the oysters and thought it was a nice addition to his drinking routine.
They've just ended up giving this guy the best farewell years of his life.
Right. I know, at this point, this guy has to think he's won the damn lottery. And he's such an alcoholic, he's not questioning any of it. He's just like, this is great. This is what life is now. So Murphy, the bartender, would try next. He left some sardines out to rot for a few days, and then mixed them with shards of metal and served it to Malloy as a sandwich.
He thought it was delicious. And
his
our
plan was a twofer. He's like, we'll poison him with spoiled sardines, and if that doesn't work, the metal would at least shred his insides. Malloy simply ate it and asked for another. So... After another huddle, the group decided to fall back to Marino's prior success murdering the homeless lady. So when Malloy had passed out that night, they loaded him up in Pasqua's car, dumped him on a park bench somewhere, took his coat and shirt, covered his chest and head with water, and left him there to die in the snow.
What kind of fucking, I love that it took him this long to be like, hey, there's one way I did it before that worked.
Yeah, you'd think that you'd start with that.
Right. Instead, they're like, we'll try everything else because that one was uncomfortable.
How about some tainted sardines? Brilliant.
I don't know. Is there a way we can make them eat metal if we put a lot of bread around it?
Look, he accidentally ingested metal. But, so they left him on the park bench there to die. When Marino arrived at work the next day, he found Malloy asleep in the basement. Apparently, at some point, he had come to and managed to walk a half-mile back to the bar, where he convinced the bartender, Murphy, to let him in. The one article I read said, when he did finally, wake up and come upstairs to start drinking again, he just said, oh, man, I got a wee nip of the chill, or something like that. They're probably like, son of a bitch. So, at this point, the group was getting pretty desperate. Between the alcohol, the oysters, the sardines, etc., Malloy was drinking Marino out of business. Not to mention that each month that went by meant there was 3 more life insurance payments they'd have to make that they never planned on making. Yeah. Because you got to keep the policies active.
That's the thing. At this point, they're just trying to break even. Right.
So at this point, there were 10 conspirators already, so the payout was already going to be stretched pretty damn thin. So Malloy was single-handedly winning a battle that he didn't even know he was fighting. John McNally, one of the random patrons that was in, one of the 10 people that was in on this, laid out a cunning plan to run Malloy over with a car. And so they recruited a cab driver by the name of Harry Green, who they paid $150. So now you're in the hole even farther, and have another person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's an 11th member.
And maybe $150 isn't going to seem like that much when he's the one fucking taking the goddamn blame for this shit.
Right. But they convinced him and they paid him. And it sounds like they didn't even pay him. They just said, when we get the life insurance payment, you'll get 150 of it. So that's even better. But anyway, they loaded the drunken Michael Malloy into the car and drove a few blocks away, which seems weird. Like, why only go a few blocks? There they got out while Tough Tony and the bartender Murphy held up Malloy by his outstretched arms. They described it as kind of like crucifixion position. You know, they held him there on each side with him in the middle. Green gunned the engine and headed straight for them, but a sudden flash of light brought the car to a skidding halt. They thought they had been seen by somebody, a patrolman or whatever, but it simply was somebody like turning on a light through their window. So they tried again, and Malloy jumped out of the way. They tried again, and Malloy jumped out of the way again. So on the third try, Green got the cab up to 50 miles an hour here, and they're in like the Bronx, like in the city. But that was apparently too quick for Malloy to dodge. There was a loud thud as Malloy's body slammed into the hood, and then another as he landed on the pavement. Green then backed over the body, and then the gang loaded up in the car and fled the scene, leaving Malone's corpse in the street. So Malloy had proven tougher to kill than anyone had ever thought, but it was finally time for them to cash out. The bartender Murphy, who, if you remember, was posing as Nicholas Malloy, the cousin, in order to get the policies, it fell on him to call the local morgues and the local hospitals, you know, to try to see if anybody had found his missing cousin. The problem was nobody seemed to have anybody matching that description. Further, there were no articles in the paper about any unidentified homeless men being found dead in the street. So now they're at a loss. Like 5 days go by, and they're sitting here. They literally began like hatching another plan to find just a random homeless man and kill him and claim that he was Michael Malloy, because they need a dead Michael Malloy. But 5 days after the accident, while they're all kind of sitting around trying to figure out what to do, the door to Marino swung open and limped Michael Malloy.
God fucking damn it.
He was battered and bandaged, definitely, but he was very much alive.
This is going to end up with him, like, fucking killing all of them somehow.
So he sits down at the bar and says, "I'm dying for a drink."
I bet.
And the whole room had to just be, like, sitting there with their jaws hanging fucking open, like, what the fuck?
Like, at what point can we just start hitting this dude with furniture? Because it's like, oh no, an accident, and just fucking break a chair over his head.
He fell down 13 flights of stairs.
God, dude, like, at this point, it's like you'd make more money just, like, making a show out of it. Like, look, the truly invincible man.
So while he drank, he told this amazing story that he had been drinking a few nights back, and he clearly remembered the taste of whiskey. And then he felt the sting of cold night air and then rushing lights, and the next thing he knew, he woke up in Fordham Hospital, wanting nothing more than to go back to Marino's bar.
Yeah.
So that would be great, like them sitting around listening to him recount this story, like, oh, wow, that's weird. We know nothing about that.
Please die.
So shortly thereafter, Michael Malloy would be found dead, for real this time, in a tenement. A rubber hose had been forced down his throat, and he had been poisoned and or drowned with gasoline, though the coroner's report would list the cause of death as lobar pneumonia. So I imagine Tough Tony had something to do with that. It's like, fuck it.
Carved into his chest. It's an accident.
So the first life insurance paid out about $800, which would have been split at least 10 ways. Right. But when Pasqua arrived to claim the other two policies, the agent asked when he was going to be able to see the body. Pasqua told him that, well, the body has already been buried, but that kicked off an insurance company investigation into the death, which quickly turned into a police investigation. And that resulted in at least most of the conspirators ended up being charged.
Turns the original out you can't shove a hose down a guy's throat.
I know. Maybe they were onto something trying to make it look natural.
But to be fair, they should have a pretty good defense of, like, look, he liked to drink weird shit.
Yeah,
we didn't know it would, like, at this point, if nothing else killed him, we thought we were just giving him a drink.
Right. You say common sense would say that this man would survive anything at this. Yeah, we thought he was invincible. The original four, Marino, Pasqua, Murphy, and Kreisberg, were convicted of first-degree murder, they'd all be sent to Sing Sing, where they'd be executed by electric chair. The one article kind of funnily noted the electric chair killed them all on their first try, but so yeah, he was the almost invincible drunk that nobody knew anything about. But man, they might have just like murdered God, because
that wasn't the story I was thinking of. It sounds so fucking familiar, though. Like I really,
you probably came across it like researching topics or something.
Probably. Or just, we're already getting like fucking delirious dementia from doing the show, and somebody will be like, "It was episode 5, dumbass."
5 and 7
and 7
and 13
and 13. God damn, you guys suck. Every week you talk about the same shit.
It definitely falls right in that wheelhouse. Now, I mean, of course, it would have been better for these people to get like thrown in jail and like Malloy to not die.
Yeah,
but you know, if it had gone that way, he would have died of alcohol poisoning like the day after they got convicted. Like they'd be like, and then he drank himself to death one day.
Yeah,
but that would be great. Them in jail, and they get word they're like, oh yeah, that Malloy guy, he drank too much last night. He's dead now. They'd be like, son of a bitch.
Yeah, it would have been really good if he had died from like a real accident or something. Just like, something they didn't plan on at all.
Witness has all 10 of them at the scene, like shooting him point blank, and they get arrested, but he survives that, only to die on.
Yeah, like they have like a firing squad lined up, but then a flower pot falls on his head just before the bullets hit. It's like, technically that's how he died, but you're all still under arrest.
So it's like, poor Malloy. Of course you feel bad for him. They literally murdered him, but like you said, man, those last like 2-3 months of his life.
Yeah, like he got all the drinks he wanted. He had friends. They weren't true friends.
I guarantee if you asked him what way he wanted to go, that is how he would have wanted to go.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're just, you know, a fucking alcoholic hell-bent to like just burn out, those are true friends, are the guys who just stare at you in awe at the fact you're not dead yet. Like,
right, like the guy that says, look, fella, you've had enough. He's a jerk.
Yeah.
The one that's like, look, you want to kill yourself with alcohol? Here you go.
Right. Don't look out for me, bitch. Just fucking...
Although, yeah, like the rotted sardine and shrapnel sandwich, you could do without that, but...
Oh, man. But I mean, I've been drunk enough that it's like you could put that in front of me, I'd probably take a bite. And
oh, yeah.
And I'd be like...
You'd probably finish it.
And I'd be like, put it on YouTube. I'm hilarious.
Look at me, I can't die.
Look at me. Oh, God, it's shredding everything.
Well, that was their big mistake. They thought, we'll shred his organs. He was a lifelong alcoholic, it seems, so he probably didn't have much left to shred. Like,
yeah, it's just... He like... The only thing in him is just a barrel. Like,
which is why he survived the car, like, hitting him, too, because there just wasn't anything in there to do damage to.
We looked at the x-rays. It's kind of miraculous you're alive, but your liver is completely destroyed. And like,
your liver is a bottle of Dos Equis.
It's like, that has been the case for the last 10 years.
I just like any story where they're like, it'll be easy to kill this old fool. And then you just like watch them get more and more like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And then I also loved that, like, as they had to alter their plans, like the first one made sense. Like, we'll give him something that's like toxic and it's killed a lot of people. And that didn't work. Like, we'll give him oysters. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah. And it's like any other life insurance murder plot. It's just so unsophisticated. Like, hey, right. we found some fucking drunk. Let's take out a bunch of life insurance policies. And you just love that, like, they got, like, the time, like, they died the moment they put that plot into action, really, because it's like they just lost, like, all that time of their life and then ended up getting arrested because this fucker, like, wouldn't die. And when they finally killed him, it's like an immediate, like, yeah, that was a bad plan from the get-go.
I like to think that, well, actually, Tony wasn't listed as one of the ones that was put to death.
Tough time.
Yeah.
Well, the electric chair fried itself trying to kill him.
I was just picturing him on the electric chair and like, any last words? Like, I told those assholes we should shoot him.
Tough Tony probably had the best idea. Like, oh no, a bullet fell on him.
Well, the thing is, if you shoot him, it's considered a murder would fall under accidental death as long as you're not implicated. The beneficiary has to not be connected to the murder, obviously.
Right.
But it sounds like they probably wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I love that their plan also is like, let's take out life insurance and make sure he dies 2 weeks later because nobody will suspect a thing then.
Yeah. They should have... They say that the simplest murder is usually the one that gets away with it, so you do what Solonik did. You shoot him with 2 handguns while jumping through the air, crashing out a window.
Yeah.
Boom, accidental death.
Yeah, that's the thing, is your story was a super hit, man, and my story was 10 idiots that couldn't kill a drone.
It's 10 idiots that were
And they kept bringing more people in. They're like,
10
let's
idiots
consult this other random person.
who are just as good as killing one alcoholic as they were at killing themselves.
Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun one. I always, like you, I always get a kick out of, the bumblefuck hitman stories. I like mine as, oh man, this guy, turned into a goddamn super killer. But then,
just because he decided to, too. That's what I liked about that. It wasn't like, he was raised without parents and the government, brainwashed him into being this tool that he broke loose and they couldn't control him, like every...
He was just like, you know what? I'm on the run. I bet I could fucking kill some people. But I like the contrast of that of just people are like, I bet we could kill some people, make some sick cash, and fuck, this is hard.
He's like, not really. You just need 2 guns.
No, you just need to be able to hit a fucking shot. Which he may or may not have done.
Yeah. It was interesting to me too that they're like, let's run him over with a car, but we have to hold him up first. It's like, he's a drunk. Just lay him in the street and run him over.
Yeah, this is professional wrestling shit where it's like, I can't kick him until you 2 hold him up for me.
And I like to think your guy was the same way. This guy, I've got a clear shot through the window if I'm sitting on the toilet, but I've got to wait until he's, I don't get bonus points for that.
If only he knew Hitman would come out as a video game and you would get bonus points for that.
Achievement.
Hell yeah, dude. Yeah, that's fun. This has been the murder hour.
As is often the case with our podcast.
Yeah. We dig death a lot on this show. And that probably won't change. We're 40 episodes in. I think we know who we are now. So come back next week when we even surprise ourselves for how fucked up these stories will get.